All right. Well, hello and welcome to the Charles Aris Podcast. So excited to welcome each and every one of you back. I am Diane Fedor. I lead our technology finance practice here at Charles Aris and thrilled to be discussing riveting issues on CFO, FP&A, and controllers this evening. I'll kick it over to my guests today and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Diane. I'm Jacob Sattler. I lead the healthcare revenue cycle management practice here at Charles Aris. Previous to that, was responsible for recruiting in the finance and accounting practice as well across all industries. Excited to be here.
Team. My name is Ryan Crumroy, and Diane, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with the group tonight. And I lead the industrial CFO practice at Charles Aris. I've been working with Charles Aris since 2006 and get brought in by businesses that manufacture product on the industrial side. So from high tech, from semiconductors down to valves and piping and true like blue collar kind of industrial oriented, manufacturing oriented businesses. But I get brought in to find the CFOs for those businesses. And I'm excited about sharing some of my thoughts on what we're seeing out there in the marketplace with you.
And Diane, thank you. I'm Ryan Morgan, Senior Director, Business Development for our industrials practice. So I'm responsible right now for managing our industrial relationships. I'm working closely with Ryan Crumroy and others on the actual execution and fulfillment of each of those searches. I've been with Charles Aris since 2011. I'm a former finance guy myself and excited to talk about the topic today.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. We are thrilled to be delving in. As I mentioned, we're really going to be covering the state of recruiting for CFO, FP&A leaders, and controllers. And, team, if you're listening to this, you probably felt it too, why 2024 was the year of the controller and why we feel 2025 might be the year of the FP&A leader. So really delving into those topics today, just to give some broad kind of oversense of what we were seeing in the market. If we were to take a step back in 2024, we completed around 25 controller searches. Compared that to 12 FP&A leaders. When we look at the first quarter of this year, we have already closed, including controller and finance roles, 8 roles, and that's excluding our CFO roles that are on our desk today. And as we look into Q2, we're already at 12 active roles in the controller and FP&A space. So it continues to be a hot finance market as we lead into 2025. Really excited to delve in that deeper today. Jacob Sattler, really going to turn it over to you. As we think about the rise of the controllers in 2024, would really love to kind of double click on that and really find out what you were seeing in the market.
Yeah, 25 searches, Diane. It truly was the year of the controller last year in 2024. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost of which there have been some substantial retirements coupled with just a lower overall incoming number of individuals into the public accounting firms. It seems that younger career oriented individuals are pursuing careers elsewhere, right? Rather than accounting. This coupled with the heightened importance coming out of challenges from the higher cost of borrowing money over the years, I think really led to the need for our clients to hire for the controller position in 2024. But you also look at factors like automation over the years, right? That has resulted in lower volumes of people in general, but in accounting specifically. And also, some internal movement, right? From accounting into finance, reporting, IT even, you see some individuals that are leaving accounting. And that means that the truly good controllers were in high demand for 2024. And this is putting substantial pressure on the finance team in private equity backed environments. And that's why strong controllers became indispensable, right? It really did lead to increasingly higher numbers of controllers receiving offers that included equity over the years, including even in the lower middle market. And some of those factors too are with an eye towards retention of those individuals, right? And if you want a strong controller, and we certainly saw the market react that way last year, we're now starting to see that same sort of emphasis being put on 2025 being the year of strategic planning.
Super interesting. And so, as we think about that controller spike, and I think the comments that you made on retention, Jacob, the comments that you made on just automation and kind of where is our, true controllers kind of going in the future is really interesting. You mentioned kind of 2025 being the year of strategic planning. Ryan Crumroy, Ryan Morgan would love to really delve deeper there. What does that look like as we think about the controllers of 24 and really thinking about that FP&A leader of 25? Crumroy, I'll throw it over to you first.
Yeah, absolutely, Diane. That's a great point here as we're starting early in Q2 right now. And there's been a lot of changes. There's been a lot of uncertainty here right now with tariffs that are floating that every investor on Wall Street would love to know, what is going to be the direction of trade policy for the next 6 months. There's a lot of uncertainty as well right now for sure in the financial markets. And that's leading corporations to really be thoughtful around how are we assessing risk? How are we thinking about strategic planning, whether it's the supply chain that they've got in front of them or exposure to pricing volatility? Okay, so how do we price for profit when we're not really sure exactly what our cost is going to be tomorrow? And we're thinking about sales in 6 months from now kind of circumstance. It's not just the pricing on the product coming in, but it's the pricing on the product going out that's really important here. And also too, looking at realizing that this is challenging for organizations and thinking about, well, we're looking at eyeballing a potential bolt-on acquisition. What is the real fair price to purchase that business for? Or we're thinking about potentially selling off a segment of our portfolio on the private equity side. What's our actual price in the marketplace right now? So there's a lot of uncertainty in the early part of Q2 in 2025 right now that has strong finance executives that have had to really pivot and figure out, what does our long-term strategic plan look like? And not just the long-term, but what's the immediate and the midterm look like as well? So that will certainly impact hold cycles. It'll probably elongate hold cycles. Cost of capital that we talked about in last year with, the controllers, really being busy in the last few years as well as capital has gone up. And as far as the cost of borrowing money, the reality is that we're thinking about the strategic planning of these organizations. A good strategic financial executive is really going to be thoughtful around testing out, modeling out, and forecasting out what are the best case and the worst case scenarios and everything in between. So we've got a playbook that we can deploy to make the most out of 2025 that we possibly can on the financial front. Morgan, you probably have some additional thoughts that are to share as well.
Yeah, happy to. So the way I look at the FP&A role, and in conversations that we're having on a day in, day out basis, especially with the clients that we work with, is we need an individual in this particular seat that can be value additive, can create value internally within the organization. Sometimes that can be addressed by what Ryan Crumroy said, in terms of, hey, we're looking at an acquisition. Where can we get help and support from a due diligence standpoint? If maybe we don't necessarily have that capability internally within the organization. I think the biggest thing though is being able to connect the dots through data, and then in turn being able to tell that story both internally and externally. That is what is needed in any organization today, regardless of what the both micro as well as macroeconomic pressures are. It's, do we have the right person in that seat that really can articulate that story, taking what has been recorded from an accounting perspective, and then really delving into the analysis and then coming out with an actual story to tell to our operations teams, our sales teams, our marketing teams, that will actually give them information that they can use in a strategic way that will be impactful to the business, both in a short, medium, and long-term perspective. Candidly, that's where a lot of my conversations, are really focused on. When we're talking about structuring finance orgs, in companies, how organizations are thinking about hey, we need an FP&A person. We don't have that person. What are the critical measures that we need to be thinking about in a particular candidate? That's why certainly we feel that where 2024, we saw a lot more of the controller seat being fulfilled. 2025 is leaning more heavily on the FP&A and strategic finance side.
Morgan, I couldn't agree more. The access and the reliance on having access to great data is becoming absolutely imperative for organizations to be competitive. So whether it's Power BI or whatever dashboard, whatever tool that the organization's using, it's having the data, but then it's also being able to translate that data out almost real time to the rest of the organization so that those operating decisions can be made. That strategic finance executive that's got access to that data and really understands how to look at that data through multiple different angles is not just at the CFO level, but all the way down to the manager of FP&A kind of level. I would view that as absolutely critical.
We appreciate you listening to the Charles Aris Podcast. For even more valuable insights on finance, corporate development, and other recruiting trends, don't miss out on additional Charles Aris blogs and newsletters, which can be accessed via the link in the description. Now back to the show.
Crumroy, Morgan, you guys have made really interesting points. Morgan, I really love when you said connect the dots through data. I think that's powerful. And Crumroy, you said something that I think is, what we're about to delve into is that CFO position, right? When we think about 2024 being controller, 2025 being truly the year of strategic planning and FP&A, the next question I have to ask is the CFO seat. Why are CFOs in such high demand, yet facing really high turnover? We'd really love to delve into the challenges that we're seeing in the CFO market today.
Yeah, that's thanks, Diane, for the question. So the turnover situation is, it is a reality right now. And publicly traded companies alone, there was almost a 9% turnover of global CFOs at publicly held companies in the first half of last year. So, private equity backed companies as well. I mean, average tenure of CFOs has dipped in recent years as well. Yeah, it's shorter than ever that we've seen in the 19 years that I've been placing CFOs for sure. So there's a few reasons as to why this role can be tricky to fill. So in the CFO world right now, you've just got multiple competing offers. Like I've never seen a situation where you've got active candidate engaged, and it's not just occasionally that CFO is, looking at other opportunities. It's frequently. Okay. So there's a lot of competing offers. You've had hybrid expectations over the COVID period where folks are still hoping to have some level of work-life sustainability that maybe is unrealistic, to be fair. And, coming to terms with the fact that, those expectations might be nice to have, but they're not going to happen at the CFO level in most circumstances. But there has also become a less openness to relocation in the CFO ranks in recent years, where folks are like, I'm not going to go and move all the way across the country, where 2017 or 18 or 19, they may have been much more open to that. I think folks maybe weighed the importance on family of stability and location higher than they would have pre-COVID. And then there's a lot of noise and outreach right now with the increased prevalence of private equity firms having acquired so many businesses in recent years and really raised the level of expectations. The good CFOs have been sucked into them, and a lot of mediocre CFOs have been sucked into them as well. So now you've got the good private equity firms right now that are really looking for strong CFO talent. And if you don't have relationships as a recruiter with those folks, he might be 10, 12, 15 voicemails in, maybe never can be able to connect in with that individual. So having a real knowledge of that market, having a depth or a reputation in that particular market, relationships with folks, that proven credibility is vitally critical to find that level of talent that you need on the CFO side. But demand is high, and to, I believe it was Jacob's point earlier on the number of folks that retired out, automation, the sheer number of people in the rank and file in the finance and accounting groups in general are a lot smaller than they historically have been. So in order to my clients, in order for them to successfully land that, they've really got to go after those CFOs hard. They got to be really thoughtful, intentional about the experience that they have. They've got to lead with their best offers first. They've got to, probably come with compelling reasons as to why that individual should leave where they are today and join in with that, with that new organization for sure. So those would be maybe some comments that I would have around that area.
I'm taking notes. A lot of great information there. Jacob, I know you've been playing in this space for a while. I mean, any other comments on just the CFO situation that we're seeing out in the market?
Yeah, thanks, Diane. And before specializing in revenue cycle management, as I mentioned in my introduction, I have a number of controller, FP&A, and CFO searches, particularly in healthcare. And Ryan, you hit the nail on the head here. Maybe this is the best news for the airlines, right? Is that folks aren't going to relocate, and there are a bit more hybrid arrangements, travel arrangements that are being made here specifically in the CFO market that you just didn't see in years past. But connecting the dots across the business, whether it's in healthcare or in any other industry, is key for these individuals. And if 2024 was the year of the controller, 2025 being the year of strategic finance, you now have that core skill set that you can make some more educated decisions for the business. And it's about finding the right core group of individuals. Those first three key hires in finance will really set a platform up for success.
No, it's a great call out. We are not sponsored by the airlines, though we would take a sponsorship. As we think about those core financial leaders, right? We are not remiss that what we love about our role is having the opportunity to talk with any candidate about what they want to do with their career and how we can be a small part of that. But we are continuing to see hurdles, especially in that financial leader hire. And so, as we think about those hurdles today, we're looking at kind of, lower loyalty, right? The phones are ringing and then they're ringing constantly. And if there's an opportunity, our candidates are picking up for that, right? We're looking at the inflated in compensation, especially in the finance and accounting world. We've seen that consistently coming out of COVID, right? And the compensation just hasn't kind of, plateaued out in the way that some of our other, roles have. Ryan, I think we've all touched on this, is that decreased supply of talent. It continues to be a decreased supply of talent. We continue to hunt for the right candidate. But the talent pool has diminished. And, Ryan Crumroy, you talked about this, but just the pure volume of PE-backed businesses straining that supply that we talked about is a really interesting spot to be kind of heading into Q2 of 2025. And so we continue to pulse that market. We continue to build those relationships, which are key, but something to think about as you continue to look at that in the market for Q2 and Q3. Ryan Crumroy, as we think about just the broader finance in totality, any trends that you're seeing in the market, anything that looks different from it did 23, 24, would love to just throw that over to you.
Diane, I really predict that 2025 is going to have sustained, continual, and long-standing growth on the finance world. I really do. Like what we're seeing right now, I don't know if we'll have the record number of controller searches that we had in 2024 take place again. I think we've seen a little bit of a lessening of the demand there. I think companies that needed those strong accounting-oriented, kind of historical, really making sure that you had everything tucked and tied perfectly prior to 2023, 2024, like that was kind of expected that was the case. And then some of those organizations during COVID realized, wow, maybe it's not as strong as it really needed to be. But I think they've largely corrected for that. But as far as the complicated kind of landscape that we have here in front of us right now in 2025, I really do believe that this demand is going to continue to sustain. Okay. And so I would encourage corporations out there right now thinking about how do I cross-train individuals internally? How do I move some of your advanced analytics folks? How do I move some of my IT folks, some of the folks that maybe use similar parts of the brain on the more junior ranks over into some of these capabilities and giving them a real understanding of financially what is taking place within these businesses? And might this be an intriguing, kind of compelling, challenging sub-vertical for me to work in within the organization? We're probably going to need to have some of that because the sheer rank and file of graduates that are coming into this space for those more junior roles. I think you're going to need to supplement that from a corporate leadership standpoint in those more junior level ranks. So I think that'll be a trend that we'll continue to see continue to pick up steam. And as we spoke about the need for data, whether it's navigating, partnerships with supply chain and coming up with creative ways, looking at longer term strategic partnerships, contract negotiations, banking relationships, and working with on that end, and really having that foresight and that proactivity. And it's not just about, hey, do we have potential of potentially triggering a covenant in 8 or 10 months from now, but do we have the leaders in play that are helping to really understand the options that are on the table? That's going to be absolutely critical here as we think about that. So if you're a corporation out there right now and you haven't been putting your arms around your finance and accounting talent, you really should be thinking about retention challenges up front. Be really intentional about holding those folks close, having them see a bigger value proposition for longevity with your company outside of more than just money. Okay. Because there's always going to be a company out there that is going to surprise you in paying more than what you thought was really competitive salary. Because to Diane's point earlier, we've seen salary inflation across the board in the ranks of finance and accounting talent here for sure. So have there be a bigger value proposition than just a monetary one for sure.
I mean, Ryan Crumroy just taking more and more notes. And as your Italian recruiter, I'm loving just putting your arms around everybody. So team, this has been really powerful. Again, it's going to be a really interesting kind of end to Q2, Q3, Q4. We plan to be there every step of the way. Again, Diane Fedor, I have the opportunity to lead our finance technology sector. We had Jacob Sattler, Ryan Crumroy, Ryan Morgan, absolutely compelling information. We would love for you to subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our newsletters. We'd love to be with you every step of the way.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you, Diane.
Thanks for listening. For more of the Charles Aris Podcast, you can subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or head over to our YouTube page at youtube.com/Charles Aris Inc.